compared to China, it's a quarter of what they have. India, it's a quarter of what they have. And we have to compete with them in the future. So we need to develop all of our people. And, education in particular played a big role in my development. I was not a particularly good student, and that's putting it mildly. Everybody thought I was stupid, except my mother. She was always saying, Benjamin, you can bring home much better grades than this. But I would agree that I could, but I didn't. But interestingly enough, my mother studied the homes that she cleaned as a domestic. She came from nothing, my mother. 24 children, got married when she was 13, dire poverty, discovered her husband was a bigamist. But she was still smart enough to study those people who had these beautiful homes, and she figured that the reason they did so well is because they were well educated, and they read a lot, and they didn't watch a lot of TV. So she came home and imposed that on me and my brother. And we were not happy campers, let me tell you. If it were today's world, we would have called social services and they'd taken her away. But what a difference it made, starting to focus on education, starting to read books, to read about people from lots of different backgrounds, entrepreneurs and scientists and explorers and surgeons. And I begin to recognize that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you is you. It's not somebody else, and nobody can stop you once you decide that that is the case. And that's why with the council, there is so much emphasis on education, because it doesn't matter where you came from. You get a good education and you write your own ticket. And we must reject those people who are trying to prevent school choice, who are trying to prevent the presidential scholarships, all the things that are there to empower people. And you will see a lot of that coming out of this administration. And, these investments and innovation give me a tremendous amount of hope for the future of this nation. Mr. President, under your leadership, I'm confident that the American people will emerge stronger from this pandemic and more determined than ever. And we, the people, will recognize, despite all the forces to the contrary, that we are not each other's enemies. And
That's great. Thank you, Ben. Oh, that was pretty good. Standing O for Ben. He's used to that. He's used to it. Great job, Ben. He's done a fantastic job at HUD, I have to tell you that. How about Scott? We'll go quick, Scott, so we'll get something. But Scott Turner is, he's a star. He's a young star. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your leadership and giving me the opportunity to shepherd the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council. And so thank you. And it's also been a great joy to work on a daily basis with Dr. and Secretary Ben Carson. And so, Dr. Carson, thank you for your leadership and your trust and confidence in me. I just want to deliver some good news along with Dr. Carson and everyone on the panel. Oftentimes you don't hear about the work of opportunity zones, but the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that the President signed into law in 2017 created the Opportunity Zone Initiative. And the President created the Opportunity Zone Council. And that council was made up to take 18 agencies, 15 federal and 3 state and regional partners, and move in a singular motion to direct resources into our most distressed, vulnerable, forgotten communities. And with this, it's a tremendous time. And so our agencies on the council direct these resources. We found 270 action items to go directly into distressed communities to help the vulnerable people of America. And we've built tremendous coalitions, partnerships on the ground. We've been to over 60 cities. I've been to every one of them over the last year to visit people on the ground, education leaders, faith leaders, community leaders, business leaders, elected officials, Democrat and Republican. See, the thing about poverty, it doesn't care what party you are. The thing about revitalization, it doesn't care what party you are. We're coming together as a people for the good of the community. And oftentimes you may not hear about this, but we sit at convenings such as this with all of these stakeholders at one table to have the hard conversations. What is the pain of the community? Why is the community distressed? And what can we do together, both black and white, Democrat and Republican, come together for the good of this community, for long-term sustainability, for generational impact? And because of that, because of these partnerships, because of this collaboration together, and many people all at this table have been working together to bring about generational impact. So long after we're gone and history tells the story, the Opportunity Zones is more than just a program. It's more than just a concept. It is a mission that is to outlast all of us. And I tell you that as you're here, because a lot of times people see a government program as just a check the box. This is not a government program. This is built from the grassroots, from the bottom up, to affect the people in America. And lastly, Mr. President, I would say tens of billions of dollars have been invested inside of Opportunity Zones, public-private partnerships. Erie, Pennsylvania, St. Louis, Missouri, West Dallas, right here in my great home state of Texas, and other across the nation, much money coming into our distressed communities. And I say all that to say, even though you don't hear about it often, we have put our hand to the plow and our feet to the ground. And all of these things were done prior to COVID. But I want you to know that right now, and post-COVID, that our spirit remains the same, that our heart is set, our face is set like flint, our mission is not done. But we're gonna need all of you to pray for us, to walk with us, to convene with us, to invest, to teach. And so, Mr. President, thank you. Dr. Carson, thank you. And to all of my colleagues at the table, thank you for your support. It's been a great honor.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. Great. Do you want to say something? Please, Pastor, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I just was thinking about that 30 years ago, I was serving as associate pastor at a small church, and I asked Bishop Harry Jackson to come and teach us on race relations, to teach us what we didn't know, because we don't know what we don't know. And now 30 years later, Bishop Harry and I are sitting on each side of the President of the United States. He was concerned about healing a problem that we've had in our nation for a long time, but not just addressing one part of the problem, but housing. We have the Secretary of Housing, Education, Justice here. Attorney General Barr, thank you for being here. Thank you, our great governor, Governor Abbott. And I believe that we're going to work together and we're going to see freedom and justice for all in America. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Great job you do here, too. Great job. Jack, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Pastor Morris, for offering your church. I think right now, like any other time in our nation's history, we need God. I'm praying to the Holy Spirit to put words on my mouth right now. And I want a nation to hear me. We need the fear of God. Mr. President, you're the only Republican I've ever voted for. And I don't just say that to make you feel good. Honestly, that's not my goal, man. I'm saying that because you stood up for the word of God. And as believers, as the church, we have to pray for our president and have his back. When he raised that Bible up after those folks burnt that church, we are in a spiritual warfare.
Yeah, that's right.
We cannot fight this battle with flesh and blood. We cannot fight this battle with politics. You cannot politicize oppression. I grew up right down the street. I looked at skinheads in the eye at 13 years old. My black father went to a KKK rally to protect me. I know what racism is. So when I hear words get thrown out about white supremacy, it eats me up. Because these men are white supremacists. That's not what they look like. I'm telling black kids across America right now, we always hear we don't have black leaders. Look at this table. We are not as divided as our politics suggest. We are not as divided as our politics suggest. But I tell you what, this president, when I walk into my prisons, I'm blessed. I teach in prisons across our nation. Men who are broken, the most broken men in our country. Our Bible teaches us to serve those in prison. Our Bible teaches us to serve the poor. And when I walk into my class, and I say, guys, raise your hand if you've gotten your sentence reduced from the First Step Act. And every single one of them raised their hand. That's because of you, Mr. President, and that's because of policy. But you're brave enough to go against what everyone else has said about you. Now I'm calling on you to do more. We have a real issue in our country. In the root of it, let's not get our eye off the enemy. The root of it is fatherlessness. Our kids don't have fathers. Attorney A.G. Barr, you said it earlier. You talked about pulling God out. Do we talk about education? Well, 71% of those kids that drop out of high school don't have a father in the house. We talk about criminal justice reform. You're 5 times more likely to go to prison or have a run-in with the police department if you don't have a father in the house. We talk about health care. You're 4 times more likely to live in poverty if you don't have a father in the house, which means you're going to be sicker. We don't have to keep looking for the problem when we see it. Now it's time for Americans of all color. I'm calling on my white brothers and sisters. I'm calling on my Spanish brothers and sisters. Get out of your bubbles. Go into the communities that are underserved, and let's do what Jesus told us to do. We can bridge this gap of fatherlessness. All we got to do is go out of our bubbles, go bridge the gap with these kids, teach them what you teach your kids. We all have rooms in our homes for a couple little boys to come in and play with our sons and daughters. Let's bridge the gap through love, through Christ, and through being what we all know we are, and that's one America. God bless America.
Anybody like to speak, please? Anybody? Who goes after that?
Mr. President, I'd like to speak. My name is Will Douglas. I'm the owner of, thank you, the owner of Crimson Care Pharmacy Group here in Dallas, Texas, and I'm also a Republican nominee for state representative here in Texas.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to thank your administration as well as Congress for getting the PPP loans. I'm speaking on behalf of my pharmacies as well as a dozen or so other pharmacies here in the state of Texas that benefited from those. Because of the PPP loans, I was able to not have to let any of my employees go. And in fact, I was able to hire additional employees because our business model had changed overnight. No longer could customers come into our store, they were having to go through the drive-through, which created a whole litany of other issues. So for that, thank you. The reason why I'm running for office is because, to me, capitalism is the most important thing. Capitalism has created this bastion of free market enterprise that we have here in Texas, with Dallas being the crown jewel. And I'm afraid that we're going to lose that system that lifts people out of poverty. I was on a call with leaders in the black community here in Dallas the other day, and one of them said something to me that has stuck out, or that did stuck out, and I can't let it go. And that's that, I think he said it was an African proverb, but that a child that is not embraced by the village will burn that village down just to fill its warmth. As Republicans, we have to find ways to make capitalism embrace the people that it's left behind. Because if we don't, the next time, it won't just be villages and businesses that are being burned down. It will be this system that has lifted so many people out of poverty.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, I'll be short. I just was going to say that thank you so much for your leadership, and I think the infrastructure that you presented today is going to help a lot of people. It's going to touch businesses like William. It's going to keep communities safe with the partnership of these law enforcement officials and the partnership with these ministers that we have and advocates like John Ponder and Jack Brewer. And so over the next couple of weeks, I think the American people look forward to seeing the wealth of executive orders that you're going to issue on justice and on economic empowerment, as well as legislative asks that we're going to make to the Hill. But we all need your help, every locality, every group or organization, because it's really about bringing us all together. That's the secret ingredient, and it has to start at the local level. It starts at the local level because you are closer to the people, and we want to create that infrastructure and give you the tools to help you do what you do best, and that's help people prosper. So thanks again, Mr. President.
Thank you, Jerome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jerome.
Mr. President, I'd like to say thank you for putting this together in our state of Texas, right here in Dallas. A lot has happened in the last week. I'm one of your officers here in Dallas. I'm also one of your commissioners on your law enforcement administration with Attorney General Barr. And I can't thank you how far we've done for that. I also have to say thank you to our great governor and our leadership that's sitting right there. Without them, we don't make this state, and don't make this state great. We've had some challenges because of what's happened with COVID, but I want to give you an update of what we've done on the commission so far, where we've had 9 full hearings throughout this entire time. That's 35 panels, 125 witnesses, 190 written statements that from individuals and interest groups. Our civil rights and community engagement organizations that we've asked to attend have no-showed. And those are the ones who can make the biggest difference when you're putting together any type of reform, because they need to be the voice to come tell us what we need. Law enforcement today is not what it was yesterday. In my 25 years, we've watched it propel to where our training is what we need the most. And with this bill, you're going to see, or with this commission, you're going to see so many reforms come out of it. It could not have come at a better time. We can't take back what happened in Minnesota. Not one officer that saw that, or federal officer that saw that, said that was the right thing that happened. It was malice, and none of us we condemn it. If I could have traded places with Mr. Floyd, I would, because I would die for everyone in this room, because that's our job. And if I could trade places with any one of those officers were there, I would have done that too, because I wouldn't have let that happen. And I have to say this to the citizens that we serve and the citizens that are listening. We see you, we hear you, we are with you, and we're going to make this better.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I just want to thank you for your leadership. Echoing sentiments of some of my colleagues up here today, thank you for your stance on criminal justice reform. Thank you for not forgetting about the forgotten people. Thank you for your commitment and your support to the men and women of law enforcement in this country, and it is so, so very important. My name is John Ponder. I'm the CEO of a ministry called Hope for Prisoners. And what Hope for Prisoners does is we work with men, women, and young adults that are exiting different arenas of our judicial system to provide the supportive services to help them to be able to successfully reintegrate back into their home, back into the workplace, and ultimately back into the community. And Mr. President, thank you for coming out and attending the graduation ceremony for those 31 men and women who were released from prison. I cannot tell you the wind that was beneath their wings, because you came and spoke life into them. And they're on a whole new vista of life right now because of that.
Great job. Great job.
One of the huge components, this is why I'm so supportive of your stance on law enforcement, because one of the key components to this reentry mechanism that we built up is our partnership with the police. Our local sheriff in Las Vegas, Nevada has given us close to 100 volunteer police officers that are mentoring and training men and women coming home from the prison system. And sir, never before in the history of reentry, nowhere on this planet to this magnitude, have the men and women from law enforcement come alongside formerly incarcerated folks and help them to successfully reintegrate back into the community. That is just further evidence that we serve a gigantic God that wants to bridge the gaps. And in that's why that is so important, because what God wants to do, the Bible calls it the repairer of the breach. See, in communities across our country, there's such a disconnect between law enforcement and people from this segment of the population. But when we're able to come up with very creative ways to bring folks together, because if you think about it, all across the country, that in that disconnect, people do not trust police. Do you know why? Because they're not in relationship with them. And in what relationship could you ever have trust unless it's life rubbing up against life in the spirit of complete transparency, that we have more in common than we have differences. And out of that transparency builds the relationship, and out of that relationship, it gets established trust. It is something that second chance employers have absolutely fallen in love with. When you can tell the employer that the person that just came home from prison, that the mentor is a captain of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, that begins to just open doors. So I thank you for that. Looking so very forward to the direction that we're going. And on behalf of the men and women who are incarcerated right now in our prison system across the country, thank you for creating that atmosphere for them on the inside. But I know that you have dug the trenches to create an atmosphere for them once they get released. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, John. Very nice. Thank you very much. Very nice. Great job you're doing, John. Great job. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President, for putting this together today. I've learned so much from these men and women on this stage. I really appreciate that. Thank you for, my name's Dr. Robin Armstrong, and I'm a physician, and I've had an opportunity to treat many patients with the plague from China, and it's been, and with the COVID-19, and so we've had a lot of opportunity. Thank you so much for breaking down some of the regulatory barriers in the FDA to allow us to use medications like hydroxychloroquine. And to use medications like remdesivir and plasma infusions and all those medications that are coming online now. Thank you so much for that. It's been, I had the opportunity to, we had a nursing home in South Texas that had an outbreak of COVID-19, and we saw a lot of nursing facilities around the country that were having horrible outcomes and many deaths. And what we decided to do was commit to this facility and use a medication that you are familiar with, hydroxychloroquine, and we saw tremendous outcomes. And it was with the help of some of our elected officials, our lieutenant governor and the state senator, we were able to get access to those medications. But one of the more frustrating things I've seen has been the resistance of some of the regulatory agencies to be more open to using that. I believe that, I certainly know that COVID-19 has significantly adversely affected the African American community. And I really believe that had there been more of an openness by the regulatory agencies, certainly by our medical boards all around the country, to use medications like hydroxychloroquine, I believe more lives could have been saved. And so I really, I want to thank you for bringing that issue to the forefront, because I believe that it did give us more access to medications. And so it was helpful for us. I believe it saved lives. I believe we could have saved more lives, but I just want to thank you for the work that's been done. Regulations, and you've really broke down a lot of barriers and regulations in the business community. Certainly, I would appreciate what you've done on attempting to repeal Obamacare and all the efforts you've made towards that. That's certainly going to improve access to care. And so I just want to thank you for all you've done, but we need to do a lot of work going forward to make sure that we minister to those who are most vulnerable. And so we really appreciate that. Thank you for all the work that Secretary Carson has done and Secretary Azar has done and our Surgeon General here has done. Thank you for allowing them to have the freedom to be able to innovate and do things and look at the data and make decisions. And so we really appreciate that. And thank you so much. And physicians are very supportive of you. We're really supportive of everything you've done to help bring this very inexpensive treatment to the forefront. And so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Appreciate it. Thank you. Please.
Mr. President, thank you for this opportunity. I'm humbled to be here. I'm Chief Dooley, Glen Heights Police Department. My experience is based on serving in a large department and a small department. And I can tell you that there is some phenomenal police work being done out here, across the board. But there's also some inconsistencies in our procedures, our policies, our hiring practices, our termination practices, our disciplinary practices, and I strongly support the need for standardization based on best practices for all police departments in our country. I thank the president for his foresight for making these things come to happen. I know they're coming, and we need it. We are a country of very good departments, but we need to be a country of great departments. And this message today is about the transition to greatness. We have an opportunity in this country to transform the future of law enforcement. But we need to make sure that we have a relentless pursuit of dedication to public service at all times and at all levels. Specifically, national consensus policy on use of force, every chief would be in support of that. Mandatory participation in a national use of force database, yes, it needs to happen. Development of national statements for discipline and termination of police officers, that needs to happen. Development of a police officer decertification database, yes, we need to be able to get those bad apples out of our industry. So what happened will never happen again. We need to enhance the police leadership and culture, and it starts at the top. We have some great leaders in this country, but we can always be better. We can always continuously improve. We need to implement improved recruitment, hiring, and promotion practices that are dedicated to having officers that are relentlessly pursuing the service of not the community, but our community. It's about not dividing us, but uniting us, and understand that we come from the community. We need to enhance the ability for police agencies to implement effective discipline. We need to make sure that we have policies that establish a framework for a community policeman engagement that fully embraces that police officers serve, protect, and connect everyone in our community so that we all can become better. We need training. This is not the time to defund police departments. When an organization or a business is struggling to be better, now is not the time to take away those resources. You provide them, and you hold them accountable, and you set expectations, and you manage them so they can be better. That's what you do. We need more training. We need more specific training that's dedicated to service of those that everyone we interact with on a daily basis, those that are homeless, those that suffer from mental illness, those that need food. Okay, we need the training to be able to connect those people we interact with those that can provide those services. That's what we need in this country. I want to end with just these few thoughts. I have a very simple saying to my officers that we serve, protect, and connect. And together is better. And as I look around this room, I know that together we will become better, and we will take this country to great levels under the leadership of Donald Trump.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's beautiful. So it's time to say goodbye. But we'll be back. We'll be back. And I just want to thank Bishop. You've been my friend for a long time, and I appreciate everything you've done and everything you've said. A great unifying source of strength and everything else, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Can I add one last thing
Please.
before you leave?
Please.
I'm tired of people blaming the current administration and others in our generation. These problems began many years ago. And what has been exciting to me is it was the church that began the abolitionist movement. Yeah. It was the church and whites and blacks working together that started the NAACP. They didn't have a black leader at the beginning of time. It was a church that led through in the civil rights movement. So I want to offer you my support in these listening sessions in that the church needs to come together. I believe we can unify better than any group. And what we're looking for you to do is to give structural guidance, which you're working on, and you've already brought forth some amazing things. But I want to affirm that Democrats can't kneel down and wear kente cloth and stop black pain. Republicans can't take some one-time act and stop black pain. But I believe we've got a man here who's courageous enough to begin something that's tough and that we're going to this time heal. And so I weep over this. I pray for you, as you know. Thank you. And we believe that we're going to get it right. I got to say one last thing. Being I lost my late wife a couple years ago. I found out in dealing with her that sometimes you just got to listen, feel her pain. If you try to fix it too early, you're going to make a mistake. Sure, listening sessions are wise because it's going to give that cathartic process a chance. So I didn't want to take up too much time, sir, but I wanted to say that the people here, I challenge you, Christians, black, white, Asian, let's come together and let's provide a safety net, and then we'll work with business, and then we'll work along with the administration, but don't push them out here up front and say, fix it now, fix it now, fix it now, fix it now, because it's never worked that way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pastor. Fantastic job you did. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you.
A glass of wine in her hand. I knew she was gonna meet her connection. At her feet was a footloose man. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. You want, but if you try sometimes, well, you might find you get what you need. And I went down to the demonstration to get my fair share of abuse. You can't always get what you want. Chelsea drugstore to get your prescription filled. I was standing in line with Mr. Jimmy. Man, did he look pretty ill. We decided that we would have a soda. My favorite flavor, cherry red. I sung my song to Mr. Jimmy. Yeah, and he said one word to me, and that was this. I said to him, you can't always get what you want. No, you can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. No, but if you try sometime, you just might find you get what you need. Oh yeah. You get what you need. Yeah. Oh, baby. Oh, yeah. I saw her today at the reception. In her glass was a bleeding man. She was practiced at the art of deception. Well, I could tell